How's it going, guys? And it's finally here. Your review of SmackDown versus Raw 2007 in this retrospective. So we've finally gotten to this game. I don't think I've gotten more requests for a game than this. I would think that people want me to review No Mercy or Here Comes the Pain. Um, so this one is a big time favorite among many people, and it's not just my subscribers and viewers. For some reason, this one holds a special place in a lot of people's hearts, and I think I know why. Because this was the first multi-platform WWE game in quite some time. Because the split was over. There wasn't a bunch of different developers making WWE games. It was just Ukes. So that was pretty historic in itself. And with that being said, let's have a look. I mean, people were really saying like this game, like I could see the demand. Like it was not a positive way. People didn't want me to rip the game apart. But wow, I mean, like, geez, Lou, you guys like really love this game to pieces, don't you? Well, I spent enough time with it where I think I could form an honest opinion, give you guys a good review. And this is a game that I did not play when it came out. No, I didn't. I actually skipped this one. I skipped a lot of the SmackDown versus Raw games since the first game, and then came back to the series with 2009. So, yeah, let's take a look, guys, and see what I thought. So let's get into it right here. So when you start this game off, you'll either be greeted by the Raw or SmackDown intro at the time. And funny thing is, in this intro, you'll see like some superstars that are like not even in the game, which, is a little bit disappointing to say the least. It makes it look a little bit outdated, to be quite honest. Like you'll even see certain divas that are not even in the game for some strange reason. And at least they did try to get the intros to be as updated as possible. But as far as I'm concerned, that's not really too important. You'll also be greeted by a tutorial, which is actually quite humorous, and I think that this was pretty well done because the game is rocking a new control style, which introduces ultimate grapples, and we'll get into that in just a moment. But look at these menus here. They look pretty nice. I always like the sleek metallic look of them. And they look really fitting for a WWE game. I mean, I've always been a fan of this. And that's the problem kind of with like 2K games. They're very bland. They kind of lost the pizzazz over the years, even though Ukes was still developing them. See, that's the thing that a lot of people don't seem to really point out. They say, oh, 2K this and 2K that. But it really was the same developer. Nothing really changed, only the simple fact that THQ went away. But people like to act like it's almost like it's a whole new team that was working on these games over the years, but that simply was not the case. But you'll see there's going to be footage still playing of the intros like off on the right hand corner of your screen, and I really like that. It really makes it feel very authentic. And you'll see the match types are plentiful. There's a ton of match types here, and one of the ones that really sticks out to me is the Buried Alive match. And the one thing that is very strange to me about this Buried Alive match is the fact that you throw your opponent in a casket at the burial site. But if you've ever actually watched a Buried Alive match on WWE television, they were usually on pay-per-views. You would never throw the opponent into a casket. You'd throw them into the grave itself, and then they would be buried. I found that to always be strange in this game for some reason. I don't know why they decided to go that route. Maybe they thought it had better visual splendor, but the authenticity is not really there. But I guess it's kind of cool. And they still have the dump truck that throws all the dirt on top of your opponent if you win. And I really like this match type. I think they put a lot of pizzazz into it, especially the mini game where you're struggling to throw your opponent in. If you have a really tough one, you're going to just have to perform a finisher on them. Like I was doing Undertaker versus Kane here, and it was like almost impossible to throw Kane in without performing my finisher on him. So we mentioned Undertaker and Kane. Let's talk about this roster. And this is from a much better time in WWE, as you could probably imagine. You've got all your big name players here. You've got Batista, you've got Orton, you've got Taker and Kane, as I mentioned. You've got Edge, HBK. You've got the mid-carders with Carlito and Chris Masters, Gregory Helms, Eminem, and you've got the Boogeyman, which is a great addition for me. I mean, this game takes place in the heart of the Ruthless Aggression era, and a lot of people love that era, as do I, so I think that's why a lot of people hold this game so fondly in their hearts. It will also be the final game that Chris Benoit would ever be in for obvious reasons, and it would also be the last time we would see Kurt Angle all the way up until 2K18. But it's great to have him here, you know, one of the greatest of all time. We also get Matt Hardy returning, but no Jeff Hardy because he came too late. He came back in August, so, you know, that was a real bummer not to have him here. And they also missed out on the whole entire ECW brand, which is, there's quite a few superstars that go missing as a result. So that means that you get no Sandman, no Sabu, no Test, no Tommy Dreamer, no Mike Knox, no CM Punk. So those are quite notable because those people were on TV, and if you were watching the ECW brand on the Sci-Fi Channel at the time, you weren't going to play as any of these people. And also, one of the weirdest exclusions was the Spirit Squad, and these guys were on TV all the time because they were right there with Vince McMahon as they were feuding with DX. So not having them there is kind of inexcusable. But seriously, was anyone really going to play with them? You know, I know that I wasn't going to. You also have quite a host of legends to unlock as well. Not only do you get Mick Foley, but you get Mankind, Cactus Jack, and Dude Love, which is something that you don't even see in the current games. You don't get all of the faces of Foley all the time. That's pretty rare. You also get Dusty Rhodes, Bam Bam Bigelow, Stone Cold, The Rock, which is kind of be expected. There's nothing really too special about that. There's very few games that don't have Austin and The Rock in them. You also get Bret Hart, Jerry Lawler, and Taz, which those were kind of rare. You didn't really get to play as Jerry Lawler in any of the Smackdown games up to this point. Yeah, since the original on PlayStation, they never actually let you pick Jerry Lawler from the character selection screen. So that was kind of historic in itself. Everyone looks pretty good for the most part. I don't really have any complaints. I mean, the faces, even though 2K nowadays, you know, blows it away. I mean, that's the one thing that a lot of people don't seem to get. They look at these games with the nostalgia goggles, but these games don't look anywhere near as good as the 2K games. Those games, especially 2K19, look flat out amazing, and there's really no comparison. So I don't want to hear you guys ever say that again, that like, oh, these games look like shit, because I have heard people say that. And yeah, the SmackDown versus Raw games definitely don't come anywhere close. It looks outdated, it looks dated. And for me, like a wrestling game, it just like it is with like real wrestling on TV, it's all about presentation and visuals. So graphics do tend to be a little bit more important with these sort of games, but there are games like No Mercy where things can be forgiven because the gameplay was so good in that game. And well, the gameplay is not really as good as No Mercy, to be quite honest. I'm not really the biggest fan of the gameplay, to be quite honest, so we'll talk about that right now, I guess. One of the biggest things about this game is the face buttons no longer come into play when it comes to a grapple unless you're looking to strike your opponent. It all centers around the right analog stick, and a quick flick of the right analog stick in any of the 4 directions will result in a weak grapple. But if you want to do a strong grapple, you need to press RB and you flick the control stick at the same time in any direction you want, and this enters into like an actual grapple, not like a full-on move, but from here you'll press the right stick in any direction you want and you'll perform a strong grapple move. If you click the button in, you will perform what's called an ultimate control grapple. And if you guys watched my Smackdown vs. Raw 2010 review, you already know what this is. This was an interesting feature. It was fun for the time, but really a lot of the time these moves end up kind of being the same amongst various superstars. So I think it was kind of a good thing when they got rid of it in 2011, because this feature, it was fun while it lasted. But the only thing that is good about it that I really do like is these are the types of moves where you can throw an opponent out of the ring. Now, you actually used to be able to do this in Smackdown 2, Know Your Role, and in the original game, I believe. There were certain moves that would like send the opponent out of the ring, if I'm remembering correctly. But you can actually choke slam an opponent over the top rope with the Undertaker. You could also carry him around the ring. You can't do this with every single wrestler, but if you pick the right one, you'll be having some fun. So that's entertaining. And I'm sure if you set a table up at ringside, you could probably do that as well. I didn't do that during this playthrough. You could also do a Razor's Edge and send the opponent on the outside. So there's some fun stuff you could get out of this. These are things that you can do in the 2K series. Also, another feature that they introduced in this game is fighting in the crowd. And you're not like really fighting in the crowd, but they do have this little designated area where you could jump the barricade, and there's all sorts of weapons here. And what's really fun is you could jump off the balcony here and put your opponent through a table. And this is the only game in the series where you could do that. And I know a lot of people have mentioned that, and I find it really unusual. Like, why is this the only game that has it? Like, they took it out in 08, which is really weird to say the least. Also returning from the previous game, 2006, is the stamina meter, which is optional. You could turn it off, but I left it on during this game as I was playing through the season mode and the exhibition matches. And I don't know why I did, but I just kind of decided that since I spent so much time with the 2K games, I sort of got used to it. But man, they ended up doing the stamina meter a lot better in the 2K games. There's one thing that we could say that was done better in those games, it is the stamina. Because here, you're just basically standing around, you're left vulnerable, and you run out of stamina way too quick. Like, you could be a minute into a match, and you'll just, like, lose stamina. And that's just a little bit ridiculous. I do appreciate the attention to detail and realism, but they didn't really handle it the best here. They went sort of overboard with it. So we're going to jump into the season mode. I'm going to be quite honest with you. This is like a full-on like WWE year. It starts you at different parts throughout the year, depending on who you pick, because there's certain superstars that are, of course, from Raw, and some are at Smackdown. Whatever brand they were on at the time, they didn't really fully update this. I mean, you still got Kurt Angle on Raw, and he had been on SmackDown in early 2006, but they still have him on Raw. And the other thing is, they completely don't have the ECW brand. We wouldn't be getting that until the 2008 installment of SmackDown vs. Raw. And I guess that's not their fault, because they kind of just dropped that out of nowhere. I mean, you could imagine, like, if you're Ukes, they have ECW just come back as a full-fledged brand. So let's just talk about the storylines. And you know, there's a lot of storylines in here. There really are. Like I said, it depends on who you pick. If you pick certain superstars that are already pre-scripted into those storylines, you're not going to get that storyline. So you kind of have to pick and choose who you want, and you'll be traded from SmackDown to Raw in certain scenarios. Overall, I really think that I enjoyed the storylines that were in 2010 and 2011 better overall, just to be honest with you guys. Some of these storylines, like, there's not always a lot of cutscenes. A lot of times what I notice, they tell the story through the commentators as you're coming down to the ring, which could be a little bit annoying because I don't really feel like watching my entrance 1,000 times, especially since you don't get to pick another superstar until you're done with the season mode or you choose to restart. So I picked Snitsky, and you know, after a while I got really tired of playing as Snitsky, but like, I wanted to play as a wrestler that I liked during the Ruthless Aggression era. I just wanted to pick someone that you usually don't get to play as in the other WWE games, especially the current ones. Like, there's like no chance of Snitsky ever being there, but you know, I figured I'd pick him, and he doesn't really have the best stats. He has good strength, but you know, at the end I was a little bit sorry that I picked him, but the storylines are like, they're okay. They're decent. Everyone with the voice acting does a pretty good job. The standout ones for me, like for me personally, my favorite was the Candice Michelle one, where she actually will turn you into a girl, and I got that one when I played as Randy Orton. I did 2 season modes. I did one with Snitsky and one with Orton, and the Candice Michelle one is pretty entertaining. Then you have another one where I did this one as Snitsky, where Roddy Piper returns and he kidnaps Stephanie McMahon, and it turns out that Stephanie is actually with Piper. You know, I don't really understand that storyline, but it was kind of interesting. And then you have this really controversial one, and if you've seen people, you know, review this game here on YouTube, you've probably seen it before, where Taker talks about Chris Benoit's grieving family, and like, whoa. I mean, you hear that line, you're like, Jesus, that's quite the line there.
If you insist on making this mistake, then your grieving family will have no one to blame but you when the inevitable occurs.
You know, very telling. Obviously, they didn't know what was going to happen, but like, you know, you gotta say, like, yeah, I gotta tell you, like, a lot of times, and we've talked about this in like 2010, where they were like predicting the future in the wrestling games, and it kind of got a little freaky. And it couldn't have been that they were like let in on the storylines, because like I couldn't see like WWE, like Vince McMahon saying like, well, here's the fucking storylines, put them in your game and let's spoil the product for people watching it on TV. I don't think that was the case, but I always found it to be really odd, to be quite honest, like that so many times in these games they had storylines that came to fruition, even though that probably wasn't the original intent. But there's a lot of throwaway storylines in here, ones that go on a little bit too long, where like JBL is pretending to be your friend, but he really isn't, and he eventually turns on you, and you can see that coming from a mile away. I just think that I like having just better storylines. Like in 2011, you had like the Taker storyline, which was great. Jericho had his, which was entertaining. And then you had the 2010 one with JBL and Shawn Michaels, the retirement angle. That was really fun to play through that one. Then the one where you have Edge manipulating Maria as the GM. So I just like when they take the time to write out like a more coherent storyline, and you get to play through that instead of like a whole bunch of like random ones. But I guess the fact that like it's a long drawn out season has its appeal. But like after a while, I want to like stop playing as somebody and then choose someone else. You know, it would have been better if you could maybe choose different wrestlers throughout this, but they never did that. Even in like Just Bring It, Shut Your Mouth, like all those games, they didn't let you like switch out wrestlers in the middle of it. So I can't really say like this is an exclusive case of that. But at least with like 2010 and 2011 and even, you know, 2009, you could at least, you know, you could play like 10 matches and like watch the cutscenes and then be done with it and then move on to the next one. Now you might say because that, you know, that's not a lot of replayability there, that's a fault. But, you know, kind of in a way, I don't really care because some of these storylines are a little bit annoying and they're not really the best. But I did like the fact that it made me want to keep on going and playing through it and doing a second playthrough to see who else, would be involved in these storylines and which storylines I would end up getting, even though a lot of them are just kind of like subpar in the end. Also, we'll talk about GM mode. Now, I gotta be perfectly honest with you guys. This is why when I did like my videos on like 2K22, I didn't go like up and beyond of like praising GM mode. Because I'm gonna be perfectly honest, I don't really care about this mode. I find it to be kind of boring. And it's just because it's not for me. For me, to me, it's like a bunch of menus. I get it, you get rated on your shows and everything. You get to pick your roster. You get to manage your money. I'm just saying it's not for me, okay? I know a lot of people will probably thumbs down the video now, and if you want to do that, go right ahead. That's perfectly fine with me. But yeah, I don't really get my jollies off to this one, to be quite honest. I really don't. It's just kind of it's kind of bland for me. I'd rather just like play matches and see storylines and watch cutscenes. Here I'm like staring at the menus, and it just kind of gets old after a while. So I think maybe people could kind of understand that. Now, I did enjoy the challenges. So you could go into your locker room, and by the way, you could customize this place. You could even customize the stairs, guys, and the lights. Oh my god. Oh, wow. You could become a wrestling interior decorator. I just think that's just marvelous. It gave me like Queer Eye for the wrestling guy vibes, but that's besides the point. So you do these challenges, and basically you'll go through them, and they're kind of fun. I mean, you'll do them, and you have some interesting like fantasy matches that are already set up for you, and like real life rivalries. Like you'll see like there's Edge and Matt Hardy paired up. They did a lot of interesting little like crossovers here and there. Shawn Michaels versus Shane McMahon, Angle, Orton, and Mysterio in a rematch from WrestleMania 22. So that was a lot of fun. And they also did ones with the legends as well. Like what if Jerry Lawler and Taz squared off? Well, they did a few times, and it's kind of cool that they just compiled that. And some of these could be pretty challenging, like Mick Foley squaring off against all his alter egos, and playing as the Mexicools versus the Brothers of Destruction is harder than you think that it would be. So I actually did spend quite a bit of time here, and the challenges are fun to complete. But all you do is you get you get money from winning these, and you get the hardcore championship for beating all the superstar challenges. Beat the legends one, you get the $1 million championship. I managed to unlock every wrestler in the game except for Stone Cold, because after doing 2 season mode playthroughs, I didn't even get to participate in the Royal Rumble, and you have to win the Royal Rumble in order to unlock Stone Cold. And well, after 2 playthroughs, I had enough, so I just left him locked, to be honest. So I couldn't even do the Legends challenge, and then get the eventual Mickey James Great Khali challenge, which, oh my god, I'm so heartbroken that I couldn't play that. I think I'll be quite fine, to be perfectly honest. But yeah, this game kept me busy. I really enjoyed it. Is it one of my favorite WWE games of all time? Guys, I gotta be perfectly honest with you, no, it's not. I know many people will probably be shocked by that, but I also think a lot of people haven't played this game in a long time. Compared to a lot of other WWE games, as far as like memory serves, I really remember enjoying myself better with like Shut Your Mouth and even Just Bring It. And I enjoyed, basically, I'm going to tell you something. I actually found myself really enjoying 2K16 and playing through Stone Cold's career a little bit more than playing through the season mode, to be quite honest. I just didn't really feel all too satisfied, to be perfectly honest, with the season mode. it just didn't feel robust enough for me. It kind of felt like they were just trying to make it big and like grandiose and drag it out as long as they could for the remainder of a year. And they just didn't seem like they had enough quality storylines. So yeah, I think like less is more when it comes to the season modes or the road to WrestleManias or just, you know, whatever you want to call them. It's also not my favorite control scheme. I'm not the biggest fan of the holding the RB button along with the right stick to do the strong grapple. I'm not a big fan of pressing two buttons at the same time for anything. To me, I think there's like enough buttons on the controller, especially during this generation, the 360 age, that we shouldn't have had to do that. I get it, they were trying to make it like intuitive and everything, but that's a lot different than, for example, like in No Mercy, just pressing a direction down on the directional pad and pressing the A button. So I think you can kind of see where I'm coming from on that. But yeah, definitely not a bad game. A really good wrestling game, and really a lot of features, a lot of different variety. Like I said, there's GM mode in there, and even though I don't particularly care for it, a lot of people did. So there's, you know, this game has a lot of flavor. You know, it really does, and there's a lot of different things on the menu to choose from. And the exhibition matches are fun. I mean, you've got a lot of different match types. Definitely more match types than what they had in the 2K games, that's for sure. Especially things like Buried Alive and all that. Yeah. So, yeah, a good game. Like I said, not my favorite, but, you know, thanks for requesting it, everybody. I hope you all enjoyed this look back and this retrospective on this classic game. And please subscribe if you haven't already. Click the bells to get all the notifications when I post all my new videos. I want to thank all my patrons for your continued support. Thanks again, guys. I will see you next time.